Hello crafty friends, it's Alicia here with a project for Tailored Expressions. Today I'm going to show you how to make 4 quick and easy winter cards using goodies from the brand new Snow Crystals card making kit. The new Snow Crystals card making kit from Tailored Expressions has a beautiful hand sketch snowflake theme. The items inside include Swirling Sentiments rubber stamp, the Snow Crystals rubber stamp with coordinating dies, a Serene Snowflake die, the Insiders Snow Crystals with some great winter-themed sentiments, All That Glitters Fluffy Snow, and Iridescent Rhinestones to help you add a little sparkle. There are also some add-ons this month. They include the Swirling Snow background stamp, Foil-it Swirling Snow panels to help you get started on decorating your cards, and a selection of snowflake envelope seals to help you make coordinating envelopes. For my cards today, the items I'm using from the kit is the Swirling Sentiments rubber stamp set, the Snow Crystals rubber stamp set, and I'll be adding a little extra sparkle with those iridescent rhinestones. I'll be die cutting some panels for my cards today, so I got out the A2 Layer Stacklets and I'm using the 5th from the largest die, and from the Petite Scallop Rectangle Stacklet set, I'm using the 2nd from the largest. When I think of winter and snow, I think of shades of blue. So for my color palette today, I'm using Sugar Cube, Gumball, Cotton Candy, and Blueberry. So I got out some cardstocks and inks in those colors. For stamping, I got out the exclusive TE Teal Misty, Versamark ink, and silver detail embossing powder, and to help with good impressions, I got out the anti-static powder tool and the Just Press tool. And finally, I'm going to need some adhesive to hold everything together, so I got out the Scotch Permanent Tape Runner and my Bearly Art glue. Let's get crafty! I'm going to get started today with the die cutting. I will be cutting 4 pieces from each of the cardstocks. From Sugar Cube, I'll be cutting the rectangle, and from Blueberry, I'll be cutting the scalloped rectangle. While I'll be making 4 cards today and sharing some mass production tips, you could make as few or as many of these cards as you would like. All of the stamping today will be done on the Sugar Cube panels that we just die cut, and now I'll be using the Snow Crystal stamp set, 3 different sizes with 3 different inks, to stamp a pattern into the background of these cards. I chose the largest snowflake to go with Gumball, the middle one to go with Cotton Candy, and the smallest will be stamped in Blueberry. I took some time getting these set up on that left-hand corner of my piece of cardstock, and now when I pick it up with the Door the Misty, I want to use a different ink for each snowflake. So right now these are a little too close together. So I'm going to remove that largest one and set that along with the Gumball ink to the side. Now I'm going to use the other 2 inks and ink up the stamps that are still in place, and then once I've stamped it onto that corner, I rotate my piece of cardstock 180 degrees and stamp the other corner. This is an easy way, again, to mass produce. You just flip and keep stamping. Once all 4 panels had the 2 snowflakes, it was time to bring back in the largest one and the Gumball ink. I placed this snowflake between the other 2, trying to get them nice up and cozy together. Then I picked it up with the Door of my Misty and stamped it onto the cardstock. If after stamping this first impression you didn't like the placement, you could definitely adjust it a little bit before moving on. Because the background does kind of look random and scattered, you're not going to notice a difference that much. Once all 4 panels had their snowflakes, I knew that I wanted to do some heat embossing on these, so I wanted to make sure the blue ink was nice and dry. So I set these to the side while I worked on the insides. Off camera, I cut, scored, and folded 4 Gumball card bases and cut 4 pieces of sugar cube that are 5 by 3 3/4. I like to do this when using a colored card base to make the personal message easy to see for the recipients. I want my stamped snowflake to hang off the bottom right of that inner card. But because I also want to place my cardstock in the bottom right of the MISTI, I'm actually going to stamp it on the top left. Later, it will just be rotated around for the inside. I chose a medium-sized snowflake and set it up in that corner, and then I inked it up and stamped it with the Gumball ink. I just like the extra touch it adds on the inside and ties everything together. While I finish stamping those inside panels, I would love to know, how often do you decorate the inside of your cards? Never, sometimes, all the time? Let me know in that comment section below. For myself, I used to almost never do it, but here lately I always try to add something if I can. Now the front stamp panel had time to dry, so I'm going to be adding a sentiment to the front center of each. For my 4 cards today, I'm using Winter Wishes, but you could definitely use a variety or a different sentiment. I will be using Versamark ink and Detail Silver embossing powder for this, and I do prep my cardstock with that anti-static powder tool. Now, before I actually stamp onto my panel, I do want to do some tests. So I pulled out the piece of clear acetate that I always keep in my MISTI and placed that on top of my snowflake piece. Because you can't see through the red rubber stamps, I want to make sure my sentiment is as straight across as possible. Also, because I'll be using Versamark ink and that would not show up on the clear cardstock, I brought in Blueberry to do some tests. I did have to adjust it, so I cleaned it off before moving it, but then I got it at a good place on that card, so now I could start with the embossing. I started stamping and adding powder to these pieces and then realized my camera wasn't turned on, but luckily I still had 2 pieces left. Before I stamp onto this, I did prep it with the anti-static powder tool so that after I stamp it, which I did twice with the Versamark ink, and add the powder only sticks to where I want it to. Now, if you do notice some stray bits of powder around your sentiment, you can always bring in a dry brush and just sweep those away. Once all 4 pieces had been stamped and powdered, I brought in my heat tool and set those sentiments. Now don't put away your Versamark and powder yet, because we're going to add some more by doing direct to paper with the ink pad. I wanted to bring in some more of that silver color, and I didn't have any silver cardstock in my stash, so this is an easy way to get that border. All you do is wipe your ink pad along the edges of your cardstock and then pour the powder on just as if you'd stamped. Now if you tap off too much, you can always pour more powder back on, or if you think there's too much powder, you can bring in the dry brush and sweep some off, but then you just heat set it with your tool just like any other stamp. This adds a nice little bit of sparkle to the edges. Once all 4 of those had silver edges, all the main pieces are ready, so I can start assembling the cards. I put these stamped pieces onto the Blueberry Scallop rectangle mat, and because with all the heat embossing it did warp the cardstock just a little bit, I made sure to put a nice border of adhesive around all of the edges and some in the center. Then it just gets added to the middle, trying to get as nice of a border as possible. I wanted to keep these cards pretty flat for mailing, but you could definitely add any of these panels with foam tape. Once all 4 of those pieces were matted, I brought back in my card bases, which I had already adhered the inner cards to. Then I placed the snowflake piece on the front center of those card bases. I love all the blues on this and all of the shine. Once all of the cards were put together, I wanted to add a little more sparkle. So to do this, I brought in the Iridescent Rhinestones that came in the kit, and I added 6 to the front of each card. To do this, I put down dots of the Barely Art liquid glue, let it get tacky for a few seconds, and then picked up a rhinestone with the embelly jelly and placed it onto the card front. Now, I didn't really pay attention to what size I was grabbing. I just picked one up and put it on the card. I finished adding some sparkle to each of the card fronts, let those dry, and here are some close-up looks at the finished cards. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch today's video. If you enjoyed the process, a thumbs up is appreciated. And if you're not already a subscriber, we do hope you'll click on the button below so you're the first to know about our latest videos. To find out more about the products I used today, you can check out the links in the description box below or visit the Tailored Expressions online store at tailoredexpressions.com.